I think the better you know yourself, the more opportunity you'll have to give yourself grace when you need it, the more opportunity you'll have to give yourself a kick in the butt when you need it. Because you'll know more about yourself than anybody else does. And you'll know what feeds you, and you'll know what bleeds you, and you'll know what ignites you, and you'll know what drains you.
All of us would be better off getting to know our own insecurity and make friends with it. And ironically, it will get smaller, not bigger. And it gets bigger when you try to hide it and keep it in the closet and keep it in a dark room and pretend you're not. It actually gets bigger, not smaller.
Next Level Nation, welcome back to another episode of Next Level University, where we help you level up your life, your love, your health, and your wealth. Excuse me. We hope you enjoyed our latest episode, episode number 1617. What's your relationship with earning it? Today, nope, I lied to you. Episode number 1618, you have to look back to see how far you've come. Today, for episode number 1619, the 3 core wounds. So 2 things. 1, I'm a little bit under the weather. I don't know if you can hear it in my voice. 2, this is the episode that I promised, 5 times and just kept pushing off. Alan and I were discussing, how do we want this episode to go? What are the stories we're going to tell? All that happy jazz. And I said, at the end of the day, I think I'm just nervous that I won't add much value on this episode, because it's these types of episodes where it's not just me riffing on my experiences, where there's like actual data, that always makes me nervous, because I don't really look at data. So, just want to be open, honest, and upfront before we get into this episode.
But you did some research for this one.
I know, but not enough. I don't feel, you know me, I like to if I'm not over-researched, I'm not researched enough. So, anything you want to add before we get into the 3 core wounds? Alan's going to have a little bit of a different perspective, because he's been doing IFS therapy now for however long, and things that Alan does, he studies up on, so he'll have I don't want to say a different perspective, but he'll have his own perspective to mine, and we'll kind of see what happens from there.
The only thing I have to add is come into this one with an open mind and an open heart, and see what lands and resonates with you, and don't take anything we say or anyone else says as absolute gospel. Obviously, let it resonate and see what lands for you. The idea here, we used to say this all the time at the Hyperconscious podcast way back, is to shake the snow globe, and what lands will hopefully be more self-awareness, more others' awareness, more awareness about the world.
I went back to jiu-jitsu today, and I promise this is going to connect to the story. And I got home, and Taryn said, how'd it go? And I said, well, I got smashed, as I usually do, but it was good. It was really good. And I said, I was afraid to go back. And she said, why? Why were you afraid? And I said, because it's an awkward situation. It can be very awkward when you're going and you're grappling with people that you don't know, and you kind of know some people, and sometimes you don't really feel like you fit in, because I'm the lowest belt, and a lot of these people have been doing this for decades, or at least a decade. Sometimes I feel like I'm on the outside looking in, not because of anything anybody's doing. My gym's amazing. Everybody there is awesome. But it's still difficult. And I said, I just lost some of that momentum. I lost the momentum of going 4 times a week, where there just wasn't as much resistance. It wasn't as much. I felt comfortable, and I was just nervous. And she said, where do you think that comes from? And I said, probably my childhood. That's most likely it. I think there's a fear of rejection. I go up to someone and say, hey, do you want to grapple? And they say no. That's never happened. In the years that I've been doing, that's never happened. So that's a big one. Or the fear of judgment, or me offending someone, or me looking bad. I don't really worry about looking bad, honestly. Somebody perceiving my stupidity, I'm using that word. What is the word you use when someone doesn't know something? Ignorance. My ignorance sometimes, which I think I have very little of, because I've studied jiu-jitsu and the culture of it, but I don't want that to offend someone. So Tara and I were having a really good conversation about this. And I thought it connects really nicely to the 3 core wounds, because I have several of the 3 core wounds in my childhood, and there's still stuff I'm dealing with today, to the point where Tara and I were talking, and she said, you said you were going to seek out a therapist to work through this stuff. And I said, I did. I found someone. They didn't take my insurance, and then I just fell off, and I got busy with other stuff, and unfortunately, I'm not saying this is right, but unfortunately it got pushed down to the bottom of the list, as oftentimes the most important things do, unfortunately. So, the 3 core wounds. I'll give a little bit of a definition as well. So the 3 core wounds: rejection, abandonment, and betrayal. So, rejection. And this, I don't know if this is from the dictionary, but, well, you know what rejection is, but at least the definition that's given here is a refusal to accept, approve, or support something. A refusal to show someone the love or kindness that they need or expect. The feeling of someone not loving you or wanting you. That's rejection. Abandonment, the act of leaving permanently or for a long time, especially when you should not do so. The act of giving something up to withdraw one's support or help from, especially in spite of duty, allegiance, or responsibility. And then I think this would be a synonym to desert. So when you desert someone, that is abandonment. And then betrayal.
I had me some dessert last night.
What'd you have?
Boston cream donut.
Oh, yeah, you told me about how disappointing those were.
Yeah, I tried again. It's just as disappointing.
Yeah, but you know what? A disappointing dessert is still better than
no dessert.
A world-class salad at times.
Truth.
Betrayal, number 3, an act of deliberate disloyalty, to be unfaithful in guarding, maintaining, or fulfilling, to disappoint the hopes or expectations of. Be disloyal to, the act of not being loyal. So, yeah, it's kind of, I guess, lack of loyalty. So those are the 3 core wounds. And then in this article I was reading, I believe it said most of these are created before the age of 7. So my dad left before the age of 7, and I had some other family stuff happen when I was younger that definitely created at least 2 of these. One of the, Alan, this was interesting for me. One of the things I read was betrayal is kind of a mix of abandonment and rejection. If you think about it, you feel rejected because the person, let's just say hypothetically for me, I felt rejected because my dad didn't want to be around, quote unquote, that's the story I'm telling myself, and I feel abandoned because he left. I feel like he left because of me. Imagine, so I feel like I have probably all 3 of these. Yeah, I feel like I probably have all 3 of these in some way, shape, or form. The reason I wanted to do this episode, as heavy and as serious as this episode is something might connect differently today than it ever has. Maybe after this, you'll feel more comfortable seeking out a therapist or a counselor or someone to talk to. I'm just realizing that. I know how much stuff I've probably pushed down from my childhood that I've never looked at, that you just either forget about, it's just super quote-unquote normal for you, and you assume 27 years later you won't remember it. But you don't ever forget that stuff. You might not consciously think of it, but it doesn't mean it's not running your life in some way, shape, or form. So as much responsibility as I feel to make sure this episode goes well, I think I also feel the same amount of responsibility to do an episode like this, because this is serious stuff, and I think this is something I wish I learned far earlier in life.
Yeah,
so
same.
Yeah.
The analogy of an iceberg comes up, and with all the coaching that I've done, and particularly the relationship talks coaching that Emilia and I do together, and I think that statistically speaking, it's safe to say that women tend to do more inner work than men, and I will comfortably say that. Not always, but you know, I often talk about how little girls, for lack of better phrasing, have a diary, they journal, they reflect, you know, and a lot of guys had the whole rub some dirt in it type of thing.
We were talking about that the other day. We were talking about how when we were younger, a lot of the girls we knew had diaries and journals, and I was burning ants with a magnifying glass. That's what I was doing when I was a young boy.
There's excellent self-reflection in that,
yes,
I feel.
Yeah, thank you.
And culturally, I think it's more encouraged, the inner work with women, but also I think maybe there's a biological component too. I don't know. I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. But what I do know is, statistically speaking, based on what I've seen, you know, coaching people from all over the world, different countries, different industries, different backgrounds, different cultures, Canada, Italy, Spain, Philippines, New Zealand, Australia, I've seen, statistically speaking, definitely a higher amount of inner work and mental health focus with women. That said, we coach couples, Emilia and I, and what I have seen happen, and again, not always, but what I have seen happen is sometimes the man is under the impression that they don't have any trauma. And rather than they don't have any trauma, they are under the impression they had a good childhood and that their childhood doesn't affect them. And so I'll always keep this anonymous, but I was on the phone with one on Zoom, not on the phone, on Zoom with a couple. And this individual said something along the lines of, no, I had a good childhood. I don't feel like I have any trauma. But it was very, very clear, having coached so many different people and understanding my own trauma, doing therapy work with myself, that underneath the iceberg that everyone else can see, there's definitely a lot of emotional wounding. There's a lot. And I think the best way to articulate this without getting overly clinical and without getting into the psychology and without getting into internal family systems and CBT and all these different modalities of therapy, what I do think is important for everyone to understand is all of us are insecure. Every human being is insecure deep down. Now, some of us are more insecure than others. Some of us have overcome our insecurities more than others. Some of us acknowledge those insecurities more than others. Some of us have bigger insecurities than others, and not all of us are insecure about the same things. But these core wounds, there is no one that I've ever met who is a human being, ever since I learned a lot of this stuff, the inner work stuff, that doesn't have insecurity underneath their iceberg. And so what you see on the surface is the social media posts. What you see on the surface is Kevin and I right now on this podcast. But what's underneath the iceberg is both, I think, seeds of greatness and insecurity. Both I believe in myself and I don't believe XYZ. So one time Kevin and I, we were at an event. This is actually at the venue that we're doing Next Level Live at in Groton. And there was a woman speaking named Shauna, and she brought me up and she talked about these core wounds and core fears, actually. And one of the fears was of success. And she brought me up and we did this sort of meditation, and I ended up crying on stage. And Kev shouted from the audience when she was going through the fears, this was prior to me crying, ask him if he's afraid of success. And at the time, I had never really thought of this. And when she asked that, I knew that was mine. And it's, why would someone be afraid of success? Logically, that makes no sense. But if you dig underneath the iceberg, you realize the more you are capable, the more you are empowered, the more you believe in yourself, the more you are confident and smart and doing great things in the world, the more of a mirror you are for other people who don't feel as capable, don't feel as smart, don't feel as XYZ. And so you trigger the insecurities of others, which then creates a negative, maybe a relinquishing of love, maybe rejection, and that creates emotional pain. And emotional pain creates insecurity, and insecurity feeds on itself when this happens. And so for me, I'll just use me as an example, but I want everyone thinking of themselves. I was insecure about some of the challenges in my childhood. Father passed away when I was 2, stepfather from 3 to 14, left my family at 14, sort of lost 3 families by the time I'm 14. That's a whole nother story. But abandonment, rejection, lots of unlovable stuff going on in there. And my trauma response to that was aim higher, get stronger, get smarter. And in that trauma response, I actually created insecurity and triggered insecurity in other people who maybe didn't feel as capable or as confident or didn't believe in themselves as much. So if you've ever been around someone who believes in themselves at a very high level, it can be very triggering for someone who doesn't. And if that triggering creates a strain on the relationship, the person who feels unlovable, me in this case, has always felt like socially things never went well for me. I never felt like an easily likable person. I still don't. I'm not insecure about my own capabilities, but I'm very insecure about relationships. Relationships never came easy to me. It never felt like they worked for a long time. It never felt like they worked long term. I always felt like I triggered other people. I never felt like social situations were safe for me. And so there's 2 main things that I wanted to share on this episode, and Kevin told me I was going to go down told you I was going to go down a different road. The two main insecurities that I try to oversimplify, so please don't quote me on the literature of this with psychology and all that. I oversimplify because it makes it simple and it makes it usable. In my coaching, I try hard to put everyone in one of two buckets. One bucket is unlovable, meaning you probably have pretty high self-belief. You probably believe in your own capabilities. And when you're alone by yourself, you probably like yourself and you believe in yourself and you dream. And when you're alone, you're in a good place. You're in a good energy. You're in a good space. Most of the time, not always, but most of the time. But you've never really felt easily likable. You've always felt like you have to dial yourself down for other people. You've never felt like fully safe with relationships and around crowds of people, that kind of thing. Then the other bucket is not capable enough. And that's the insecurity, is you probably don't believe in yourself that much. You probably are afraid you're not going to end up somewhere great. You're probably afraid you can't achieve your goals and dreams. You probably don't feel confident that your career is going to be what you really want. You probably maybe don't feel smart enough or attractive enough or good enough or capable enough. And this is yin and yang. And we're all on one side of this pendulum or the other. And unfortunately, we trigger each other. And that triggering of each other, if not handled with emotional intelligence and understanding and empathy, it creates these insecurities that actually get bigger, not smaller. And so fortunately, Kevin and I are the yin and the yang on two different ends. And fortunately, we grew and matured together to understand each other at a deeper level, which now allows us to hopefully, help all the listeners do that as well. But I had no idea about any of this in my early 20s. No clue.
Same.
And I'm just grateful we were kind of figuring some stuff out.
Now, can I be yang? Or is it yin? It's yin and yang?
Correct.
Which one am I?
Whichever one you want.
I'd like to be yang.
Okay, then you are yang, sir.
You're yin.
Yin, and by the way, it's yin and yang.
Can't have just one.
You can't have just one. It's called the genius of the and. And is important, not just or. It's not yin or yang. It's yin and yang. You need both, and that's the important thing, because we need each other, even though we trigger each other.
I tell this story often on two thoughts. One, I think deep down, this is one of the reasons I started this whole thing in 2017. Because when I started listening to podcasts, when I started listening to audiobooks, when I started watching YouTube videos, I never resonated with the people who said, well, just don't worry about rejection. Just go get rejected 999 times, and the 1,000th time somebody say yes. That's the dumbest shit I've heard in my life. I hate it. It's literally the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my entire life. I hate it. It doesn't make any emotional sense. And it doesn't even really make logical sense, honestly. I don't think it does. It never resonated with me. It never, ever, ever resonated with me. And here's why. Because that's a really good layer one awareness. It makes sense. It makes a really good bumper sticker, maybe a really good social media post. But here's the thing. That's not going to help you if you're a dream chaser and your dreams require you to go convince someone of your product or service. That advice is not good for you. Because where did it come from? Where did the thing that is holding you back today actually come from? I don't really think you can heal the wound until you figure it out. And I tell this story when I go on podcasts. The first time I ever went to therapy, was based on the fact that at the time, and you'll probably laugh through this. Alan laughs at these things. Now, it's not because it's funny. It's not, again, when I get uncomfortable, I smile. So I'll be smiling through this. I'm not saying it to make light of anything. That's just my thing. That's what I do when I'm overwhelmed. That's what I do when I'm uncomfortable.
It's only funny because you've made it here.
That's fair. But I don't want to lessen anybody else's experiences.
Yes.
So, and it's because I know you're going to laugh. That's a piece of it too, is you and I
heard
also
all
think
these. You funny. So.
Well, I appreciate it. This story isn't super funny though.
Okay.
So, I just want to put that out there.
I'll lock it up.
Yeah, well, again, it is what it is. I just want to make sure anybody watching knows that it's not from that place. Next Level Nation, what is happening? If you've thought to yourself, I want to try coaching, but you don't really know where to start, group coaching would be a wonderful place for you. That's really why we created it in the first place. We start a new round every 90 days. So if you're hearing this, go to the website, nextleveluniverse.com, and we have the landing page where you can actually hold your spot right now. Even if there's a group going on right now, you can still lock your spot for the next one. The biggest thing that we've seen is as we get closer and closer to the date, unfortunately, some people end up missing. The group fills up and they can't do it, and then they end up regretting that. So please head over to the website. The link will be in the show notes, and we would love to see you there. At the time, I lived in Boston with my girl. Yeah, there it is. With my girlfriend at the time. I lived in this sketchy apartment. It was my first place by myself. So I moved to this sketchy apartment. I was never home because I was traveling for my job. I was making a ton of money. I didn't really care. It's like, I'm never going to be here anyway. Let me just pay. I think it was like $800 a month. Flashback to 2016 or whatever that was. I meet someone. We start dating. Like the foolish person that I have been in my past life, I move in with this person like 3 months in, maybe 4 months in. I don't even know. Too soon. But we moved in with another couple in this amazingly nice apartment in Boston. It was a 3-floor apartment. It had cameras. It was amazing. It was a very, very nice place. And at the time, I had this facade of success. I had a nice car. I was in really good shape. My girlfriend was a model. I had all the things, a lot of money, all that stuff. And I remember everybody was out of the house one day, and our bedroom was in the loft. Our bedroom was at the very top. And I was home, and I was playing Call of Duty, a video game, and I remember thinking, if this is what life is, I don't know if I want to do it. The best way to explain it is it was just gray, it was just dark, it was just bland, I wasn't excited about anything. It felt like Groundhog Day, but not a good Groundhog Day. Not a Groundhog Day that was increasing in terms of happiness, joy, fulfillment, impact, all of that stuff. And I told my partner when she got home that night that. And she said, I think you should go to therapy. And I said, absolutely not. No, I don't need therapy. I'll be fine. It's fine. I just had a moment. I just had a moment today. It's not a big deal. And we discussed it more and more, and I ended up going to therapy. And the first time I went to therapy, I had a parallel park in downtown Boston, which is the most anxiety-inducing thing of all time. Number one. And I walk into this building, and I don't know if there was an elevator. I took the stairs, but it was this spiral staircase, like 5 floors up, and the stairs are creaky. And the whole way up, I'm thinking, I don't want to do this. This is going to suck. Am I going to cry? Is this person going to laugh at me? What is going to happen here? And I remember learning things in that first hour session about myself that I didn't even know. And I remember leaving that day feeling so much better. I felt heaviness in a certain light because things were revealed to me that I didn't really fully know the weight of them, but also I felt very empowered. It felt really, really empowering to know things about myself that were creating things in my life that I didn't understand. And then I ended up going back to that place for a while, and then when I moved, I got a new therapist, and then I was traveling so much, it was just, I was gone every weekday, so I couldn't work with a therapist unless they were willing to do weekends, and a lot of them just didn't do it. And there was no virtual at that time. This was 2016, 2017, 2018. So I remember the empowerment that came with the awareness. And I think that's why I'm so big on awareness. Because, yeah, awareness can be heavy and it can suck. That thing that happened to me when I was a child, that's what's creating this, and that's why I'm really struggling in my relationships, and that's why I don't feel like I can hold down a job, and every time I get given the potential of a new opportunity, I always turn it down because I'm afraid I can't handle it. That's where all that comes from? My goodness. But I think it's better to know. I think it's better to know because at least if you know, you can go to battle, for lack of better phrasing, against it. And the reason I always try to tell that story on other podcasts is because I don't think a lot of people, especially a lot of men, that don't really talk about therapy. And I've admired you for that. You've talked about therapy a lot. And I got to get my crap together and get another therapist. It's not that I'm afraid to do it. I just, genuinely, it's just got pushed to the bottom of the list, unfortunately. Now, again, I'm not saying that's right. So the reason I went on that entire story is because I think the better you know yourself, the more opportunity you'll have to give yourself grace when you need it, the more opportunity you'll have to give yourself a kick in the butt when you need it. Because you'll know more about yourself than anybody else does. And you'll know what feeds you, and you'll know what bleeds you, and you'll know what ignites you, and you'll know what drains you. And you'll know why certain people trigger you in a certain way. I'm sure, Alan, at some level, the reason you triggered me is because the people like you would never give me a job when I was trying to get jobs. If I walked in and you were in the office, there's no way. There's no way I was getting the job. Somebody else was going to get the job. That's probably a piece of it. I didn't really do well with the intellectual type. So, again, I think awareness is the most important thing in the world. I really, really, really do. That's why we started with the Hyperconscious podcast. That's why we do episodes and we say, this is going to be a hyperconscious episode. I just think awareness is a powerful, powerful opportunity, and that's why I felt the responsibility to do this episode. As much as I really didn't want to do it because I'm super uncomfortable, I feel the responsibility to do a heavy episode like this because you just never know. Maybe you know this. Maybe you know this better than I do. Maybe you know this better than Alan does. I wouldn't argue with that, especially about me. But maybe you never heard it before. And maybe one thing in this will break something loose that's in a new awareness, and it'll all be worth it. That's my thought.
So Kevin and I have done this before. I think it's important. Let's say Kevin and I are giving a speech in front of 1,000 people. And I said, Kev, you have to get the majority of these people to like you. 0 to 10, how certain are you could do that?
I do think it's getting harder. I do believe, I would say it's probably getting harder. I'd say probably 8.
Okay. 0 to 10, how certain are you could get them to think differently and add value to their life where their future is bigger, better, and brighter?
See, I think this is a anomaly one for me because it's just as high.
But it wasn't in the beginning. Let's go back to the beginning.
Yeah, in the beginning.
So can we go back to the very first speech?
Yeah.
Okay. Imagine that version of Kevin. Very first speech. 0 to 10, how certain are you can get the majority of the people to like you? Or at least to not dislike you.
Yeah, at that point, I'd probably say like a 9.
Okay. How certain are you can help them build a bigger, better, brighter future with the deeper understandings you delivered?
I think I was fairly delusional at what I knew at the time. So I'd probably say a 5. When in reality, it was probably... Yeah, I would say 5. In reality, I don't think it matters because... Yeah, I'd say 5.
So if I answer the same questions, mine are the opposite.
No.
So how certain am I that I can get 1,000 people back then to like me? Very, very low. Probably lower than 5. Definitely lower than 5. And again, it's not 1,000 people, but the majority of the room to resonate and like me, not dislike me. Very low. But my belief in my ability to help them think differently and create a bigger, better, brighter future, it's 10. Very high. If they really listen, that's the irony. Which if they dislike me, they're not going to listen. So therefore, it's funny. You can't do it. Kevin and I now have... It's important for us to understand that. And for the listeners, rather than this being about you and I, Kev, which one is easier for you? Which one comes more naturally to you? Because, Kev, you mentioned maybe that's the reason why you didn't like people like me is because people like me never hired you. But what if people like you typically don't like me?
I would say that's accurate.
And what if that has triggered and created this massive insecurity inside of me? Because that's, I think I grew up in an environment that had a lot of people that were maybe less intellectual. Not maybe, definitely less intellectual. Mm-hmm. And so at the end of the day, all I want for everyone listening is reflect on this. Which one, is it? Do you feel easily likable? Do you feel relatable? Do you feel like you easily get along with others? Or do you feel kind of unlovable, unlikable? It's tough for you to get along with other people. But you maybe feel really capable. Maybe you feel really smart. Maybe you feel like more than enough when it comes to achieving your goals and dreams. And maybe it's neither. Maybe it's both. I don't know. But what I do know is every single human being I've ever met has insecurities. Some of us are just less aware of what they are and how big they are. and how to overcome them. And what I do think is really powerful, and what I've come to understand, because I used to be insecure, not know it, not realize that I was insecure, and then chase big goals and dreams to try to maybe run from those insecurities without even knowing I was doing that, to now doing the inner work and realizing, oh, so I'm not really insecure about giving the speech. I'm not insecure about whether or not I'm going to add value. I'm insecure about whether or not I can get anyone in this room to resonate with me as a person, as an individual. And I feel like there's going to be some people in this room that villainize me, don't like me, hate me, talk behind my back. And now that I know that, that bothers me, and I can just sit with that and be okay with that bothering me, in a way it controls me less. It doesn't control me as much, because now I can make a conscious choice and say, well, what's the alternative? Just never give a speech? No. All right, so if that's the inevitable consequence, that someone here might not like me, and that does trigger me, I'm going to have the courage to show up anyway and give my best effort. And I feel like that is more empowering than trying to pretend you're not insecure. And that doesn't mean to make up insecurity you don't have to be relatable. I've done that too. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is genuine, authentic. I'm going to feel what I'm feeling, and I'm going to choose to have courage to give it a shot anyway, knowing that maybe the rejection will affect me. Rather than, oh no, I don't care about rejection at all. That doesn't bother me. And I feel very strongly, and I think very logically, that all of us would be better off getting to know our own insecurity and make friends with it. And ironically, it will get smaller, not bigger. And it gets bigger when you try to hide it and keep it in the closet and keep it in a dark room and pretend you're not. It actually gets bigger, not smaller. So, go at your own pace, but try to get to know what you are insecure about and where you are insecure. And then when you notice that coming up, you can respond instead of react automatically.
That's vulnerability.
Yeah.
That's where vulnerability actually starts. It doesn't have to start with you having a conversation that scares the crap out of you with someone you care about. I think for most of us, it starts with, why do I feel this way that I feel? Where does that come from? Or why did I get insecure? I love the why. I think why is such a powerful question. Why did I get insecure? Why did I feel comfortable? Why did I make that joke? Why did I agree with that person when I didn't actually believe in what they said? Those are some vulnerable questions. So, if anything, it's okay if this is super hard. I think it's to be expected, especially if it's not something you've practiced a lot. I would say that's one of the best benefits of being surrounded by self-improvement. Self-improvement is pretty much our company in our life at this point. Is I've had the opportunity to look in so many mirrors that I just didn't want to. But I have a big enough reason to do it, because I want to be the best husband and business owner and man that I can be, and business partner and friend and all that stuff. I want to be the best I can. I think the people around me deserve that. I genuinely do. But that also requires more feedback. It requires looking in those mirrors. But what happens at the end of that, when you can be vulnerable with yourself, it's far easier to be vulnerable with other people. It's still challenging. When I say far easier, I don't mean you just snap your fingers and it's done. But if you can do it with yourself, that's a really challenging place to start, and it's a really powerful place to start. So give yourself some credit if you're doing that. It might never be seen. It might never be recognized. I doubt it. I doubt it'll never be recognized. But nobody's really ever going to know the inner work you're doing. Really, unless you choose to tell people, or somebody might say, yeah, I don't know, I can just sense it. It's just different. Your energy's different. Hopefully you'll get that. But I know doing the inner work can be lonely.
I think you will get that from people who are also doing the inner work.
That's fair.
People who are doing the inner work can tell the people who aren't. And as I've gone down the therapy road more, the inner work road more over the last 9 years, because the first quarter of my life, I didn't do a ton of inner work. I was mostly achievement at the expense of fulfillment. And I flipped the script and I focused on the inside. I used to say I was successful from the outside in, and I flipped the script at 26, and 9 years later, I'm successful from the inside out, is kind of the story that I say on other podcasts. And that's how I really feel. But when I'm on the RTC calls, to bring this full circle, when the person hasn't done the inner work and the other person has, it is very clear to me. But it wasn't in the past. I had one couple where I told Emilia afterwards, I said, sweetheart, in the past, I would have thought the opposite. I would have thought he has it together and she doesn't, because on the surface, it actually looks that way. But underneath the iceberg, he's the one who's way less developed, even though he's more successful externally. And I think that that's why we need to yin and yang this thing, so that we can be internally and externally successful, because that's holistic and that's how you have great relationships and a great career. It can't be one or the other, in my opinion, if you want to be fulfilled.
I would agree. One of them is easy to show off. The external stuff's easy to show off. And if you think that's going to get you the love and validation and all the approval that you're seeking, again, I've been down that road. I understand. I have a deeper understanding of that. I spent a lot of time doing that. And then this journey, we started from scratch all over again. And to your point, we did Inside Out. I'm glad we did this. This was one of my favorite episodes for sure.
Same. And we both did fall for that, the outside
100%.
in thing, for sure. And
I thought it would fix it.
we flipped it. So did I.
I thought it would fix it. It's like more, but none of those mores were self-awareness. It was all money or whatever.
Yeah, for me, it was external awareness of, achievement at the expense of fulfillment, versus focus on fulfillment and the inner work and then allow success to be a byproduct of that. But you need both. I hope everyone has a magnificent career and a magnificent relationship and a magnificent, relationship with yourself. And it makes sense because most of us focus on one or the other, not both. And I fell for that. So did you. 100%.
The world is a weird place. You know what I was thinking of last night before I went to bed? This has nothing to do with the episode. This is just one of Kevin's weird thoughts. I said this to you when we were either in Wisconsin or we were in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And I said, you know what's strange, man? You look at a skyscraper and you think to yourself, my goodness, that thing is heavy. And again, maybe not you, but I think of this. I wonder if that weighs the world down. And then you think to yourself, that skyscraper was already on the world somewhere. It was already here on the planet. We just had to put it together in the way it's put together. So the world probably weighs exactly the same. Pretty cool. What are your thoughts on all that?
Side tangent that's fairly funny, but Emilia the other night, she was talking to me about how she visited China once in Shanghai. And there was a building that at the very top of it, there was a really nice restaurant. And she said that they were hanging art from the ceiling and that because of the wind, you could see the art swaying.
I don't like that.
And I said, yeah, that's going to be a no for me. Ever. If the building is tall enough to sway in the wind, it's going to be a no for the kid.
They build those in now, so it has a certain amount of play. So shout out to there's the earthquake buildings in California have a certain amount of give that they can move. No, yeah, same. I don't even like elevators. Real quick story before we go. Alan, you have a podcast in 5 minutes, so I'll make it quick. Alan and we went to Toronto when we interviewed Evan Carmichael, and we stayed in this Airbnb in this high-rise, and the parking garage was like 6 floors underground. And I thought, I'm not even kidding, I was fighting off a panic attack.
Same.
I was like, it's getting thin. The air's getting thin down here. I don't know, man. And then we get into this elevator, and the thing is whipping up. I think it was on like the 26th floor or something. And there's no way.
It was in the 30s.
No way I could live in a building like that and do that every day. So if you live in a high-rise in a city,
the elevator was not that stable. It didn't feel sturdy to me at all.
It felt fairly sketchy.
Yeah, same.
So again, these have nothing to do with the episode at all, but
nothing against anyone in Toronto or Pittsburgh. I'm not a city guy. That's all I have to say. That's it. Not a city guy.
I don't think Pittsburgh's that big of a city. Toronto is a very large city. We realize that. I think it's
2.7 million people.
Is that how many it was?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. If you have not purchased tickets for Next Level Live 2024, please do so. The link will be in the show notes. March 23rd, 2024. 30 people in person, 30 people virtual. In person, you get a free catered lunch, and it is very, very good food. We've eaten there before, and you also get a free Next Level Dreamliner. We hope you all will join us. Again, we'll be talking about stuff similar to this. Not all this. We'd like to break it into health, wealth, and love. Whether it's mental health, physical health, emotional health, spiritual health, whether it is, relationship with yourself, all of that. So if you've listened to us for any amount of time, you kind of an understanding of what we're going to talk about. Tickets are in the show notes.
Kevin and I did the entire curriculum, and we have all of our very best. I mean, we've accumulated over the last 6 years based on 1,600 episodes, hundreds of interviews, thousands of coaching sessions with people all over the world, different industries. We've condensed everything we can into this one day. Self-awareness, how to succeed on your own terms, how to design a life that's unique to you on your own terms. It is our very best stuff, all condensed into one day. Please get your tickets as soon as possible. We are officially 30 days out. It is game time. It is peak month. And we are super, super pumped. We will not be doing another event like this until another year. So please do not miss this. Again, it is $47 for virtual, $97 for in-person. And the value for the price point is the best I've ever seen. So I hope you join it. And like I said, if for whatever reason you do not absolutely love it, we will give you your money back.
Tomorrow, for episode number 1620, hopefully, because I've been screwing up the numbers here. Yes, I would say so. Dealing with trust issues. I thought it would be appropriate to do an episode on trust after talking about what we talked about today. And I was looking back at our old episodes, and I remember we did an episode on trust this is 2017, I think, or 2018. So this is a long time ago. I like to revisit things from a new perspective. So that's what we're going to talk about tomorrow. As always, we love you. We appreciate you. Grateful for each and every one of you. And at NLU, we don't have fans. We have family. We will talk to you all tomorrow.
Talk to you soon. Next Level Nation.